This time on episode 522 of Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., we're going to be discussing the 2024 film Deadpool and Wolverine.
I'm Anthony Bachman from All Things Good and Nerdy, a geeky podcast part of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other fantastic geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
Raised on X-Men, empowered by the Avengers, strengthened by the Defenders, webbed by Spider-Man, adopted by the Fantastic Four, and forged by S.H.I.E.L.D. Stand by for your Marvel debriefing.
And now it's time for your Marvel debriefing. I'm Agent Lauren.
I'm Agent Michelle.
I'm Agent Chris.
And I'm executive producer SP.
Yay! Welcome to Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. This show is recorded on Saturday, August 3rd, live from the Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. studios and broadcast TVA-wide. And Michelle, what are we here to talk about today?
We are here to talk about Deadpool and Wolverine, which premiered July 26, 2024. Deadpool is offered a place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe by the Time Variance Authority, but instead recruits a variant of Wolverine to save his universe from extinction.
Overall thoughts, Lauren?
Unsurprisingly, I cried.
Which part?
I mean, the end.
Okay.
And the credits.
Michelle?
A huge, violent, and funny experience.
Chris?
Disney really let this one get released?
And my opening thoughts are Marvel Jesus is now a Disney princess. Look, we have to talk about all of the homework, especially with school starting up in a couple of weeks across the United States. What homework do you think you had to do in order to watch this, Michelle?
Definitely watching Deadpool 2. So you know at the end how he gets the timey-wimey thing that he used in order to get the Time Variance Authority's sort of attention in a way, and all of the things that he did from before. So you definitely had to watch Deadpool 2.
Chris?
I hadn't seen Logan until the day before, and maybe that's more of an extra credit thing, because I think we would have been fine without having seen Logan, but I think it also definitely made it a lot better. But really, I think you had to know about Loki and how the TVA is operating.
I agree with Loki and the TVA. As far as Logan, you wouldn't have known who X-23 was without seeing it, and you wouldn't have known about Logan's death. Now, it was all kind of explained away, but if you had not experienced that before, then you would have been scratching your head about it.
Yeah, but that's also been in the cultural zeitgeist for so long that I feel like just knowing that those things happened would have been, okay, fine, I can deal with it in the movie.
Okay, so this is, what are you, 30 or something? This is 30-year-old Chris. Would 12-year-old Chris have, well, would 18-year-old Chris, is rated R, right? Would 18-year-old Chris have known everything?
Probably not. But it's Deadpool, so who cares? It's fun.
All right. Lauren, what do you think?
So I didn't do any rewatching for this. I've been thinking about this since. You need to, I think Michelle's right. Deadpool 2 is the one to watch over Deadpool 1 if you're only going to watch one of them before this, because of, the timey-wimey stuff and some of the minor characters and things. And you have to have an awareness that the TVA is a thing, and you have to have an awareness of the Fox movies. I think it definitely always makes it richer to have watched more, but yeah, I think an awareness is most of what's needed.
I like your term of awareness. I would say, having watched everything from the 1999 X-Men movie on forward, I think that gives you a complete picture of all the jokes, all the insiders, all the Easter eggs, everything that's in there. Because this was a goodbye to the 20th Century Fox Marvel Universe, but it was also acknowledgement of the MCU was there as well. I mean, we got Thor in there, we got the TVA in there and everything. So this was one of those oddball things where it was Deadpool and you could go into it and just have fun. However, if you wanted to get the full extent of everything, you had to have watched everything from 1999 on, including the Elektra, and maybe not the Elektra movie, but the Daredevil movie itself, because that's where Jennifer Gardner started.
Also Blade, which was, I think, like 98.
Oh, Blade was before X-Men? I didn't
Yes.
realize that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Blade was in like 98 and X-Men was in 2000.
And then the awareness of the whole Gambit movie that was in development for so long, but never happened. That was there. So there's just so much rich things both on and off the camera that if you didn't know all of that, I really felt for the people. I enjoyed it. I had fun watching it, but I felt for the people that were not comprehensively had a knowledge of everything that was in there, that just went to go see Deadpool for the fun of it. And they just didn't get the full extent of everything. I'm sure I missed some things as I was watching it. I've only seen it once, but at the same time, I was able to get what I got, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. I went into it, not, my expectations were that this was just going to be fun and non-serious, but who knows? It might have implications inside the MCU.
Yeah, I got to admit, my expectations weren't the highest because I was hearing a lot of like, oh, it's just a nostalgia fest. And yeah, it kind of was, but in a way that I appreciated.
All right, so let's move on to the film violence, because it was violent, as all the other two movies were of Deadpool. But Michelle, was it too violent?
There were moments where I had to kind of roll my eyes and look away from the screen because of the close-ups of certain shots and Logan and Deadpool fighting yet again. Could it have been toned down and still been the same experience? I think so. For some moments kind of went a little long for me, to where it's like, okay, we get the idea of the frenemy experience that Deadpool and Logan are having. They are, trying to get to know each other, and the way they're doing so is through the love language of violence, which really isn't a love language, but for them it is. I guess when I see it again, perhaps the level of violence will make more sense, but I don't know. I just think there 30 seconds here, 10 seconds there off of it, I think would have just made it still the same, but not as intense for me.
This is where I think watching Logan the day before had the best impact, because Kaylee and I had gone to see the first two Deadpool movies, and yeah, those are violent, but it's all it's more comic based violence and stuff, and Kaylee can handle it, and that's fine. But we went into Logan knowing that it was like its own level of violence, but you're also comparing it to like the MCU level of, oh no, I dropped my teddy bear kind of violence. And so just her knowing the levels that Logan went to for everything gave her a better time to prepare for how Deadpool was going to be, because we knew that it was going to be stepping things up from other entries in the MCU.
I am the wrong person to ask if a thing is too violent. I watch horror movies and deathmatch wrestling. So I was pretty unfazed by everything. I thought it was on the more cartoony side, but I, again, might be biased. I did really like the fight scenes between Wolverine and Daredevil because it's two guys who basically can't be killed through conventional methods going at each other with that knowledge. So yeah, it reminded me a bit more on the level of like Evil Dead 2 type of violence where, yeah, it's over the top, but that makes it kind of funny to me.
As a previous owner of both a 2004 and a 2007 Honda Odyssey minivan, I could say I laughed my butt off when they were fighting on, in, and around the car. That was like, okay, yeah, trash that puppy. I salute you for doing it. That was absolutely, because, I don't own it anymore and never want to own another minivan. It was fine for when I had it for what it was used for, but nope, don't want one again. So thank you very much for doing that. Another fight that wasn't necessarily Deadpool centric was at the very end when you're having the final stand of all the cameos. So, I mean, first of all, it was one of the many fights that was in here, but also it really highlighted some of the previous characters and the cameos that were within the show. So, Michelle, do you want to run down a little bit of that?
Oh, well, if you watched Logan, then you know about X-23. Laura, who's played by Daphne Keane, coming back a little bit more grown up, but still having the same attitude, stepping right back into that role. We had Elektra, played by Jennifer Gardner. It was good to see her in fighting form. And just her doing the Deadpool disc, for those of you who, the Daredevil disc, for those of you who need an extra level, Jennifer Gardner was married to Ben Affleck, who played Daredevil, and they are divorced, kind of messy. So her being able to do the disc was very fitting. So there's another extra level to the joke there. Blade, we had Wesley Snipes coming in. Yes, the one true Blade. I know Blade is still on the slate, but it's got to be prepared for the whole, yes, this was cool, but was it Wesley Snipes cool? It's going to be compared to that. It was great seeing him come in looking just like he played Blade the day before. And just the attitude, the look, everything. He just completely oozed Blade yet again. Then we have Gambit, played by Channing Tatum. Gambit is the film that never was. It was in development heck for a very long time. Think about the Blade movie that Disney's trying to do, how much in development problems that's having. We had that with the Channing Tatum Gambit. I loved all the accent jokes because there's a whole, who was your accent coach and can we understand him or not? I could because it was Gambit and I knew what to expect. Then, of course, before we had the whole group coming back together, beforehand, we had Johnny Storm, which was Chris Evans, now cursing here he is giving this speech and Deadpool comes up and he's like, he's going to say it. He's going to say it. And you think he's going to say Avengers Assemble, but then he says, blame on. In my seat, I just kind of went, yes, I know where this is going. I knew probably some of the other cameos we were going to be getting. And there were some where we didn't get, Jessica Alba, darn, who played Sue Storm, just for those of you who have not seen the cinematic, masterpieces that are those Fantastic Four films. We had him cursing, doing these epically long insults about Cassandra. I loved how at the end, it was like, now, wait a minute. Deadpool's like, now, wait a minute. Let's go back to the tape. And we went back to the tape and we did, again, get that long diatribe from Johnny Storm, who died in the epic skin peel. So be careful about those skin peels.
At that point, I had somebody in the front row of my theater yell out, "Language!" And the
That
whole
was-
theater was just rolling and laughing because that is a reference to Captain America in the second Avengers movie.
And of
We
course, they
also-
mentioned the Punishers. There have been so many Punishers, and that unfortunately had died. So we didn't get any Punisher cameos. But this collection, and then seeing them going out and fighting, giving their characters an ending. I liked how they were convinced by doing this, by giving themselves what they all deserved, and that was closure.
I also really liked a bunch of the little minor cameos, mostly minor cameos, from the antagonist side. Like the one that is the most noticeable because he has the most screen time is Aaron Stanfield? Stan something as Pyro. And then we had in the background, there's like Tyler Mane is back as Sabretooth. He was Sabretooth in the very first X-Men movie. You could see Ray Park in the background as Toad and Kelly Hu as Lady Deathstrike. And I forget the actress's name, but she played Callisto in X3 and she's back for several scenes. We did get a new Juggernaut because Vinnie Jones was like, that costume was a pain in the ass. I'm not putting that back on. So instead, we got a guy that I guess knows Ryan Reynolds because he was also in Free Guy. I am that nerd who likes to find out who's in the background scenes and things like that.
Well, Ryan's whole family was involved. Blake Lively was Lady Deadpool, and all his 4 kids were in there as well.
Yes, that made me very happy. I remember when Lady Pool showed up, I'm like, I know that voice. And then, of course, in the end credits, Blake Lively. Like, yeah, there you go.
My favorite cameo, though, Henry Cavill Wolverine.
Yeah.
Oh, that was... I loved all of the variants.
And then Ryan's message in his dialogue to the DC universe as well. He was saying that. He didn't say anything about Green Lantern, but, he's like, oh, yeah, that's fine. They suck over there. Come on over here.
Speaking of Channing Tatum as Gambit, I think that was my favorite part of the movie because, yeah, I'm pretty sure that we've actually discussed way back on this podcast when it was being discussed and whenever there was like a director or writer change, and then of course it never happened. And I'm pretty sure I'm on the record as saying that my dream for that would be a like dialect accurate swamp Cajun accent, which is exactly what we've got. A guilty pleasure show that I used to like for a while was called Swamp People, and it was about gator hunters in, the swamps of Louisiana. And the second he started talking, I'm dying. I had a pretty easy time figuring out what he was saying because we had a lot of... I lived in Houston for a very long time, and we got a lot of Katrina refugees. So Cajun accents were not like uncommon. I know that my spouse and my best friend that I went to go see it with had a much harder time understanding him. But I was thrilled. I was so thrilled every time he was making a reference to like, yeah, I think I might have been born in the void, things like that. I think there were enough references that he made that even people who didn't know the backstory would have picked up on it. I loved it. I loved it so much. And then also everything about him looked cool as hell too. Like they did the powers right. Loved it.
Let's talk about the cameos that weren't. Chris, you have a notable exception here.
So, I understand why this didn't happen, I think. And I'm still sad about it. I still wish it would have happened. But we have no Gwenpool in here. It would have been so easy just to have her costume in the crowd of Deadpools because it's pink and white instead of red and black. It would have been really cool to have her as somebody from our world who is somehow in that movie, whether it's a big role or not. And I mean, I know they're probably not doing it because then you have to get Sony stuff involved and share money even more. But I want more Gwen.
Eventually, I think it'll happen. Eventually, my prediction is that eventually Sony will have to sell off. Now, I don't know if that's going to be before Disney sells Marvel off, but I think eventually Sony will sell their rights off at some point in time. Also, an article came out a few days ago about Josh Brolin regretting not being involved from the Cable standpoint. I didn't fully read the article, so I don't know all the intricacies, but Cable was a notable exception. They did mention Cable in here as having died, but Josh Brolin himself did not have any screen time. Well, let's talk about our past, which is coverage of the entire MCU. And we've talked about Loki before and the TVA. But Chris, what do you think this means about the future?
I'm still trying to get that figured out because we've seen the TVA in Loki and we've seen it here, and that's it. So you've got a lot of people who have seen it in one place or the other. And like the TVA has such a good spot where they can go and, here's this thing that didn't work. Let's go fix it real quick. Here's this thing we wish we would have done that we couldn't have done before, and now we can. So let's go make it happen. And that can turn out really well, or it can turn out horribly. And hey, why did you go George Lucas this thing up and mess with our childhoods?
I think Kevin is going to have a very difficult time, and there is a reference for you as well, is going to have a very difficult time figuring out where the future lies. We're not going to talk about it. We're not going to get into it, but there was some very interesting casting news coming out of San Diego Comic-Con last week. We'll see how that goes. But I think the TVA is squarely involved in the whole thing. At the end of Loki season 2, you had Loki basically becoming the tree. So I don't know if that puts a pin in it or not, but we will see.
Speaking of cameos, we got B-15 from Loki season 1 and 2 making a little appearance at the end to yell at Matthew McFadden.
And a proper TVA reference for that. Because the TVA that we were introduced was, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was alternate universe version of the TVA?
What it was is it's a guy, basically a guy who decided to run his own project in the TVA without actually letting the TVA know.
So it's TVA proper, but he was running it in different universes.
No, he's in the TVA universe.
Okay.
He's just does not like the new way of doing things, I guess.
So this is an example. If you haven't seen the entirety of everything that was involved, particularly Loki, you don't know exactly what's going on. So what is this TVA? Why are there two TVAs and that sort of thing?
Yeah, the answer is there are no two TVAs. There's just the one, and this guy is being a jerk because he can't handle change.
Let's talk about jokes, the funny parts of the movie. Michelle, what was your favorite joke?
My favorite one is so obscure. Again, it has to do with background knowledge. So in the background, before they do the big Deadpool fight with all the other Deadpools, there is a shoe store called Liefeld's All Feet. Now, Rob Liefeld is the one who created Deadpool, and the artist is criticized for not being able to draw feet. So when you know this and you see that shoe store and it's called Liefeld's All Feet, I started laughing. My mom did not understand because it's this shot of just Deadpool, Wolverine, and then there's this store in the background, and I'm starting to laugh when it's not a typical moment where you think someone should laugh. And here I am, I'm laughing, and I'm really the only one in the theater laughing because it's like, the all feet.
Deep cut for those that weren't all inclusive. It's just another example of it, but it was fun for you and it was fun for me. I was actually looking at the same thing going, I know that largely because you guys had talked about it on the podcast before. So yeah, that was pretty fun for me. I liked similar time period in the movie. I liked the fourth wall, but you can't talk about Deadpool without talking about the fourth wall, because Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool version, it does the fourth wall perfectly. And the back and forth with what was the name of the Deadpool that was, the long-haired,
Nice
fair-faced
Pool.
Nice Pool. Yeah, Nice Pool is sitting there and he tries to make the fourth wall joke of the proposal. That's all he says is the proposal. It falls so flat, right? Ryan's like, what? So yeah, that was not my favorite, but just an acknowledgement of the fourth wall, which was all over the movie from front to back, including that first fight scene that we have where Ryan is basically desecrating Logan's corpse.
Oh God, I loved everything about that opening scene. Deadpool movies, by now, we know they have the opening scene, slow motion credits, fun stuff and the details. Him desecrating Wolverine's skeleton, including like wearing his own arms and doing the claws and then not knowing how to really work them. Between that and the Bye 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 dance, which was a nice little reference to a throwaway moment in X2, I was screeching in delight.
Did you know that Ryan did not do the Bye 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 dance?
I am not surprised.
Yeah, it was not Ryan. It was, I'm trying to remember who it was. I looked it up several times, but it was not Ryan that was doing the dance.
Yeah, as a veteran of the boy band wars of the late 90s, early 2000s, I can assure you that is in fact the video and performance accurate Bye 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 dance. I was doing it in my seat too.
I mean, my favorite jokes in there were either the Liefeld's all feet, which I think is the perfect kind of deep cut, because if you don't get it, then it doesn't take anything away from the movie. But also the super timely, let's see how it ages. Yes, I am the one true blade, because of all the problems that are happening with it right now.
Talking about problems, let's talk about how the strike might have affected the movie.
Okay. I will preface this by saying that I went in deliberately looking for this. I wanted to see how they were going to handle that. Because as we discussed when the writer's strike was happening, technically you can't improv because it counts as like something. There's a lot of stuff. Usually they would have like writers there to punch things up or kind of smooth out those improv moments. So the biggest moment of that for me was during Deadpool's party, where one of his guests, that guy that kept showing up at the bar in, I think, previous movies, he said something and Deadpool's like, was that improv? And got mad at him. And so I'm dying in my seat and I'm the only one. But it was really noticeable to me how much of the dialogue was like B-roll footage, which was shot over somebody's, like you'll see somebody talking and you'll see somebody reacting. You know that the person in the foreground is talking, even though you can only see like the back of their head, but then you see the reaction. So there's a lot of those shots and a lot of very clearly ADR, which is when you go in after the recording and either replace or re-record dialogue that didn't, that got messed up the first time due to whatever. So I noticed a lot of that. Then again, I was specifically looking for it. I'm really curious about y'all, what you noticed.
I wasn't looking for it. I didn't notice it much. I did notice the improv. I thought it was more of I'm Deadpool, I'm the one who does improv and you're not, so why are you doing it kind of thing. Although I'm kind of kicking myself now for not making the writer's strike connection with it.
Yeah, that's a layer that I missed. So when I do rewatch it, I'll have to remember that to get those jokes a little bit better.
Wasn't even thinking about it, just went in, like I said, to have fun. And I had fun with it, and I wasn't pulled out by anything, largely because this is so off the wall to begin with. This is not reality. A lot of the times we get into the, moment that just pulls us out and we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did this, whether it's plot or if it's something with tech or something with voices or, whatever it is for us individually. And I didn't have any of that experience with this just because it was so off the wall. So I missed it. I'm glad, Lauren, that you went in with that mindset, though, because this was one of the movies, probably one of the last movies that we'll see that was affected by the writer's strike.
Yeah, and it was the one that I was honestly the most worried about because the Deadpool movies have historically been relying so much on kind of that improv-y feel. It helps, though, that Deadpool, for the most part, you can't really see his mouth moving, so you can alter as needed.
Indeed. Right, a couple last things before we close this one out. Chris, what do you think of the whole mutants within the MCU now that we've had Deadpool?
You can make your argument about whether Deadpool is a mutant and whether he counts as an X-Man and all that fun stuff with when he was introduced and everything in the comics. But how are we feeling about this as what I'm considering the proper introduction of mutants to the MCU? Like, yes, we had Charles Xavier before in MCU things, but he's sitting in his chair being Charles Xavier, but not really doing Charles Xavier. This time we have mutants doing their mutant things, and it's in an official MCU thing. So I kind of like this introduction of not making a big deal out of it. It's just acting like they've always been there.
Yeah,
Kinda,
it's an
sorta.
it's an introduction without being an introduction, in a way.
It reminds me of the whole, this is the first gay Disney character. No, really, for real. Because we have kept having mutants introduced in the MCU before. This is just kind of the... I'm trying to... I don't even know the word for it. It's every single time it's like, yes, they're here for real. No, now this time, really, they're here for real. Okay, but this time, really, it's for real. Okay, but what about this time? So I didn't really have an opinion on that.
Ladies, I got to ask you, what'd you think about the Hugh Jackman shirtless scene?
I mean, very much appreciated, but also I was there like, can Hugh Jackman, going back, looking at the very first X-Men movie, he's in good shape, but he's in like normal human good shape. And not, he's very obviously, been low dosing HGH and not drinking water for several days and all of that stuff that you got to do to make the muscles pop now. So yes, aesthetically appreciated, but emotionally, I was very much looking forward to Hugh Jackman getting back to go and eat like normal people food.
Yeah, let the man have a donut.
I thought that it was prosthetic, a la Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. I did not think it was his real shirt or torso.
Nope, apparently he did get in shape, and then I don't remember if he was coming off of a run of the Music Man or about to go into a run of the Music Man, but there was one of those like wild, very unhealthy body changes thing going on. Which again, aesthetically, I appreciate it. Thank you for all that you do. But can we go back to having like normal people bodies?
Well, they are superheroes, so. All right. I think we talked about her before, but one last shot about Cassandra Nova.
Okay. So when I was first getting back into, when I was getting into seriously reading comics more, other than the stuff my cousin gave me as a kid, one of the first things I ever picked up was Grant Morrison's new X-Men run from the late 90s, early 2000s, which is where Cassandra Nova was first introduced. So I'll always have a soft spot for her. I think she's an incredible comic book villain. Emma Corrin, I thought they were good. They were a lot of fun. and they were nice and mean. Weirdly enough, not sadistic enough. The Cassandra Nova in the comics is on a whole nother level of mean and creepy and awful. And we got hints of that here. It's true to the character. And it wouldn't have been fitting for the movie if it had been more so, I think, because you got to have that sense of humor still. But if you really want a creepy villain, go back and read starting from Grant Morrison's E is for Extinction.
I thought the kind of playful, not super overtly sadistic, though, was scarier, because I'm not just being mean for the sake of being mean. I'm being mean because it's fun. And I don't even care. We're just going to have fun with this. And oh yeah, you're just going to happen to die along the way. And I'm going to rip all these memories out of your brain.
Also rip your skin off. Very Pyramid Head in the first Silent Hill movie there.
My gosh, I saw that. Was like, oh, ugh.
I laughed. I am the wrong person to talk about gore.
Well, the way the CGI was done was laughable because, the skin came off and he was there with a expression on his face for, the skeleton expression on his face for a little bit. And then everything just.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. If you want a horrifying skin ripoff moment, Silent Hill, the one from like 2000, whatever, bit more realistic, less cartoony, very disturbing. Gave me nightmares.
Mental note, never watched that movie. All right. I left the movie with one final question, and apparently I wasn't the only one with that one final question.
So I ended up putting that as we've been doing like, what's a final question about what we're talking about, something related? Why was Thor crying? My guess, okay, first, maybe in the future there will be a moment of genuine emotional connection. Maybe Deadpool maced him. Maybe this is an alternate universe where somehow he took Loki's place in Thor: The Dark World, because that's what that looked like to me. When I saw that, I was kind of wondering, are we going to get like a little glimpse of Loki at some point in this movie? But of course, we didn't. So what's your theory? Why is Thor crying?
He could have stubbed his toe or stepped on the D4. If any of you are not familiar with dice, a D4 is worse to step on than a piece of Lego.
It is basically a caltrop. And I once saw a hardcore match where a guy whose whole gimmick was D&D threw a bunch of them out on the mat and then powerbombed a guy into it.
Well, both Chris Hemsworth and Ryan Reynolds have tweeted that they know why Thor was crying. So I'm wondering if this is going to show up in the MCU in the future. Is it a nod to Deadpool 4? Is it a nod to a future appearance of Thor? Has it already been filmed? Because it has been filmed. We saw it. But has it been filmed in conjunction with another project already? And this is a good Easter egg, basically, for it in this film. So I don't know. I think it has something to do with something that we'll see in the future, though.
I think he's just being told about the adventure and he's crying because he wishes he could have been there so much.
You'll be doing this until you're 90.
90.
I need to go back and watch because I was positive that was Thor from Thor.
It looked
the
like
second
Fat
one.
World.
Dark World. Thank you.
Oh, it looked like Fat Thor to me, so I don't know. We'll see.
I thought the way the hair was, because you can kind of date Thor era by what kind of wigs or what kind of dye or what length of everything they're making him do. And I could have sworn that was the Dark World era Thor. But I guess I'll just have to see the movie again and judge from there.
Oh, darn. I wanted to go see it again, but events occurred that I couldn't make it for a second showing before we did this. But yeah, I look forward to seeing it when it comes out on streaming at this point. All right, everybody. Final thoughts, Lauren.
It was a surprisingly moving goodbye and thank you to the Fox universe. And again, I've been somebody who has been watching this whole time because I was a little nerd kid. And I know that a lot of those movies are kind of bad. And I love them. I was surprised we didn't actually get a Blade 3 reference because Ryan Reynolds was in Blade 3 and he and Wesley Snipes notoriously did not get along. Like, there was the whole thing where they had to CGI Wesley Snipes' eyes open in one scene because he was so annoyed by Ryan Reynolds he refused to open his eyes for the scene. I'm glad they seem to have mended that fence. But during especially the end credits, when you're getting the little behind the scenes stuff all the way back from like the 2000 X-Men movie with Hugh Jackman looking so young and fresh faced, I got emotional. I realized how much of my life this is taken up and I cried. I'm going to start crying again.
Well, before you do that, Michelle, what are your last thoughts?
Mine are similar to Lauren. I too watched all of the Fox films, and when those credits rolled and, Time of Your Life started and everything, I was disappointed that as soon as the movie was over, a whole bunch of people from the theater got up. It's like, what? Have you not seen these movies before? Like, come on. You're supposed to stay till the end. It's just now, that's what you do now. It's a superhero movie. There's going to be things that are there. But I was not expecting a video with everyone and talking about, doing this for the first time and everything. And then talk about another sort of nod in the goodbye. Hugh Jackman recreated the X-Men 92 picture of when Logan is laying down with the picture frame and then there's something in the picture frame and then has his hand on it. He actually created the meme for us. So thank you so much, Hugh, for giving that as our, piece of our final goodbye.
Video reminded me a lot about, a lot of the high school graduation videos that you see these days, remembering way back to when they were kids and moved on up. Some wedding videos are the same way too. So yeah, it reminded me a lot of that.
My band video yearbook from high school was just like that. That was like 20 something years ago.
You shared that with us. Yeah,
yes.
I watched that.
And of course, Time of Your Life was like the graduation song at that time. And I know it's continued to be over the years. So it did have that moment of, yeah.
Rob from Smoking and Drinking and Capes is in the chat room right now as we're streaming live on the Gonna Geek YouTube channel. And he said there was a Blade 3 reference. Blade said, I don't like you. Deadpool says there was a history of something like that.
Okay. I missed that.
All right.
Thank
Chris,
you.
Last thoughts?
I think it is a very widely known opinion that this latest phase of MCU movies has been not as good. And you can take that for whatever reason you want it to be, from actual quality of the movie to expectations just being pushed too high. We're not going to make that little distinction here, but I'm excited to see what this does to ramp up future projects, because you had so many new people coming in and seeing this because it was Deadpool and Wolverine. You have a new level of violence you can get in the MCU, and as people are getting older watching these, you can make the more violent movies and be fine with it. So you don't have to make everything as kid-friendly as it has been, which, can be good or bad depending on your viewpoint there. But you have the MCU officially having mutants for real. You have the MCU having the Fantastic Four. We know that movie is happening. We know some other things about it. Like, what is this going to do for all these future projects? And I am so excited for when they can finally have Spider-Gwen and Gwenpool in there.
My last thoughts are that a big thank you to Ryan Reynolds for bringing Deadpool and perhaps The Greatest Showman to the MCU.
Yeah, that little hint of when they're in the car and for a second it plays Greatest Showman. It's kind of a guilty pleasure of mine. Guilty because the real life P.T. Barnum was absolutely horrible and nothing like the movie, but still.
For those that don't get that reference, I broke the fourth wall there and I took Hugh Jackman as The Greatest Showman. There you go. All right, next time you guys are going to continue on your X-Men Evolution review. You're going to cover Season 2, Episode 11, Shadow Dance. And then in about a month and a half, I will return to join you as we cover Agatha All Along, the new Disney Plus film or series that is due to premiere on September 18th. In the meantime, Michelle, if anybody has any thoughts that they want to give us about our show or Deadpool and Wolverine, how are they going to get a hold of us?
You can visit our website, legendsofshield.com. You can leave us a voicemail at 844-THE-BUS-1. That's 844-843-2871. You can join our Discord server at gonnageek.com/Discord. And remember, we are a proud member of the gonnageek.com network.
All right, that about wraps it up. Until next time, I'm the executive producer of this show, now that I'm not the only producer or director anymore. SP?
I'm Agent Lauren.
I'm Agent Michelle.
And I'm Agent Chris.
See everybody next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for dropping by again. Ha. Thank you for dropping by again, SP. You have been missed.
Yes. It's good to be back.
See, I told you I knew the code.
See, it's good that you remembered, because I never remember anything.
I'm a little horrified that you guys think you put me in the freezer.
Where else would we put you?
The fridge.
Oh.
Thank you for listening. The intro music heard on this podcast is Great Marvels of the World by Lynn Publishing, found on pond5.com. The outro music heard on this podcast is Cinematic Trailer by Ed Records, found on audiojungle.net. Other transitional music on this podcast is found on incompetech.com, audiojungle.net, and pond5.com. For more information about this podcast, please visit legendsofshield.com. Excelsior! Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. is copyright 2013 through 2024.